wondering how I got into this mix.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Derrick with the Conscious Resistance Network, and I am in Orlando, Florida. I've got about a 2-hour layover before I head home to Houston from Virginia. Those of you who saw my coverage, thank you for supporting. And I decided to stop off nearby with my friend Justin. What's going on, brother?
How you doing, man? Good
to see you. I'm doing good, man. It's good to see you. We wanted to do this. We were actually planning on doing this week via Skype, but I just happened to have a layover in Orlando, which is where Justin's from, so we figured why not do it in person. And I don't believe that Justin has ever been featured on this channel. If you have, it was probably during one of my tours, like on a short video or something like that.
Right.
So Justin does a lot of great work, and for those who've been tuning in lately, we've been getting back to doing interviews recently. We had an interview with Johan from India, who's out there spreading all kinds of good information. We talked to Dave from Australia, so we're just talking to people from all over the place. And of course, Justin's from Orlando. He's doing good work, so we're going to dive into that. Go ahead and just give everybody a little rundown of yourself, your activism, kind of the things you care about.
Yeah, so about 7 years ago, I got involved with activism and independent journalism, mainly wearing the activist hat. But just like most people, stumbled across a few documentaries. Next thing I know, I'm in the rabbit hole. I find out about Monsanto and the Federal Reserve and all this good stuff and, well, bad stuff. And I essentially started organizing the March Against Monsanto in Orlando, Florida. That went on for 6 or 7 years, but I'm also involved in a host of other topics. Whether it's like I saw you in Standing Rock, I think that may have been the first time we met, from protesting pipelines to the Federal Reserve to the wars. I also do a host of other things like speak at city council meetings, whether it be about fluoride or pesticides. We try to get stuff done locally as well. And it's really a host of topics that I'm trying to focus on. And right now, lately, I guess I would say vaccines and 5G have really been my main focus, just because they're so in our face and so important right now. We've got the vaccine mandates and the 5G rollout. They kind of take, I think, priority right now. So that's what I've been focusing on as of late.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you still have a YouTube channel by chance?
Yeah. We are Change Orlando. Facebook and YouTube is what I'm active on the most, and I'm also on Instagram, jharveywrc.
Cool. We'll put all those links below. Definitely give Justin some likes, follows, and subscribes and all that good stuff. Yeah, you mentioned, like you said, we met at Standing Rock. I think we'd already knew each other before, like a lot of folks online.
I think so.
This is the first face-to-face of us connecting. And I've seen you doing the Fed stuff. I've seen you doing the anti-war stuff. And like you said, right now, I also agree. Vaccines and 5G are particularly pressing for the moment. And
right.
Those who follow this channel, for the last year we've been covering both those topics. And at the beginning of 2019, I told you guys that the World Health Organization said that vaccine hesitancy was one of the greatest threats to world health. So we knew right away, okay, there's going to be a big push. And then throughout 2019, the push in New York City, the push in California, and then recently in New Jersey and elsewhere. And then, they're coming to Texas as well. Like, there's a lot of people moving from those states to come to Texas because we still have some pretty open, vaccine laws. But this has been going on for a while. How are things, like, as far as vaccines, like, what's Florida's stance on that in Orlando? I mean, is there any effort to remove exemptions, or do you guys have exemptions still? Or
no, well, we actually still have exemptions, but Florida is next. I think they're going after the biggest states, now, and we've seen what's happened in California and New York. There's been a bill that's been proposed to take away our religious exemptions and put our medical exemptions in question. Basically giving it to a board and severing that doctor-patient relationship more. So Florida is next. It's been brewing, but because of what's happening in other states, we've been really trying to get ahead of that curve and get the awareness, start contacting these local representatives, and get out there first before it's too late and we just have to have a protest at the last minute, at the last vote.
Yeah.
We don't want to get to that point. So Lauren Book has introduced a bill in South Florida. We're really going after getting people informed on that, and also just raising public awareness in general, because as much as I like to see people fight the local political fight, I think the most change happens with just actual public awareness. When people can make more informed decisions and they spread that throughout their community and people make the change that way, I like doing it. Hitting them from all angles, but that's my favorite way to do it.
So what do you think is, tell everybody first before we get into what people can do, what you have been doing, because for those who check out the Instagram, and maybe I'll throw some pictures on the screen, you're going to see Justin in a referee suit, and I've seen that in other cities.
Yep.
And I mean, the actions that you've been going to, or I don't know if you've been helping organize or how that's been going, but they've been pretty big from what I can see. And there was one you were at recently. There was 2 separate groups. Of, good amount of people. Tell us about all that stuff.
So what we've been doing basically is. What I like to do is if I see a movement starting to gain traction, like the Monsanto movement, I jumped on, we made some change, and we took a hold of that momentum. Well, that's the same thing that's happening with the vaccine movement right now. They've got the mandates coming down, and we need to really just hit them hard. So I said, let's use my activism and organizing experience and start getting involved with these marches. So there was the Millions March against mandatory vaccines in late August. We got involved with that in Orlando. We did a march, around the city. But then lately, Joshua Coleman, big shout out to him. He's doing incredible work out in California. He has really kicked off this V is for Vaccine movement where you dress up as whatever. It's basically a theme that you pick, and you crash a very large event, whether it be Comic-Con, a celebrity getting a star on the Hollywood sidewalk or whatnot, big football games, and you find a massive audience, and you dressed up as referees for a football game. And you go out there and you raise awareness to those people, because his motto is, if they're going to censor us, which is a whole other topic you could go into, like they are with the vaccine topic, we're going to bring this to the people live and direct and at massive events. So the event you spoke of was the Oprah event. We also have targeted her because she was publicly promoting vaccines. So we decided, let's get in front of her thousands of fans at every tour stop. And that's where we had 2 groups, catch the group coming in and the group coming out. So the V is for Vaccine is spreading across like wildfire. It's in all different states now. We're at football games. We're going to be at the Daytona 500 February 16th. So if anyone's near Central Florida or in Florida, contact me and I'll get you involved with that. We're going to be dressed as in like red jumpsuits with racing hats and have massive signs, and there's going to be 250,000 people attending.
Nice.
So that's a big crowd we can get in front of.
No, and I totally agree with you on that. So these topics that we're talking about right now, 5G and vaccines, they just also both happen to be topics which are becoming increasingly censored on the internet. And for the listeners here, you guys know, censored by Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, MailChimp, they're all censoring groups who are talking about vaccines specifically. And then when it comes to the 5G topic, you've got like the New York Times telling people that it's just Russian disinfo, only, these are just the Russians wanting you to believe bad things are coming or whatever. So we're kind of having to take on that whole thing at the same time as fighting the awareness battle, fighting the censorship battle. And I think that the approach you're taking is spot on, to go to the streets, because I've tried to remind the audience fairly often, especially recently in face of this censorship. I got 45,000 subscribers on YouTube and I'll get a couple hundred views. No, they're not seeing any of the videos I'm doing. And so what I'm telling people is like, look, if we have opportunities, we have important issues, we have opportunities like, say, Epstein getting exposed or different things like that, go to the people and talk to the people on the streets, like in public events. We did that at the Houston Astros baseball team was in the World Series in Houston recently, so we used that as an opportunity to go to the event. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of people from all over who don't typically even come to downtown. They're there just for this sports game, and talk to them. And I feel like there's a lot of activists who maybe have kind of grown up in the age of the internet and never put a flyer in somebody's hand and haven't had that experience, and had the experience where somebody says, holy crap, I didn't know there were people talking about this in my community. I know you've had that happen, because I have as well. And like, you just have these conversations, you make new connections with people, and it spreads organically in a way that the internet could do and has in the past, but isn't so much anymore. So talk a little bit more about the importance of that. Yeah,
it's a great feeling, because you can get discouraged. Obviously there's going to be people yelling some negative things. It's going to be an experience, but when you get done and that one person that comes up to you and says, thank you so much for what you all are doing out here. I recently saw a group of people like you, and I went home and researched this topic, and now I don't vaccinate because of X, Y, or Z, or I found out about fluoride, or whatever it is. And when those people say that, it makes it all worth it, because you know that even though some people are yelling good things and bad things, there's going to be people that go home and Google it, and they're going to wake up because of what your actions that day. And it's the ripple effect is literally unknown, the effect you're having. So that's what motivates us. That's what keeps us going. And, I was blown away at the response at the Oprah event. The women, it was a much better demographic than the drunk football fans, mainly men who had been drinking. This was all women So there were some nurses and doctors thanking us, and it was a good
That's
thing
cool.
to see. So I think it's very important, like you said, do the social media thing, but we've got to stay in the streets. We've got to keep the human interaction. And if they're going to censor us, we're forced to do that more.
Absolutely.
You know?
So let's talk about 5G now. You have been doing just an immense amount of work on that, and I'm going to go ahead and insert some of the news clips. You've had two stories covered on 5G, right? Or was it just the one?
Yeah, two of them now.
Two local news coverage. So tell us a little bit about that and what you've been doing to get that news coverage.
Right. So one of them was because I did a city hall public speaking event, or not event, public comment section. I stood up and I educated the city council about 5G. The news picked up on that when 5G was about to be rolled out in a local community nearby. And they contacted me, we spoke. And another time was when I decided to put 5G warning signs around 5G, the new small cell 5G towers around downtown. I put those up, and then the news ran a story on that. Now, they didn't know that it was me, but they still ran the story, and it got some traction, and I hope that some people looked into it because of that.
And it was overwhelmingly positive, like from my perspective. Like there wasn't anybody, they didn't have any expert on there like calling, well, whoever's doing this is crazy or something. They just sort of reported like, hey, there's people concerned about this.
They did show a doctor at the end.
Okay, did they?
Yeah, they did interview a doctor at the end. It said this is perfectly safe according to American Cancer Society, whatever the tagline is. But for the most part, it was a fair piece, and it was good that they picked up on it just organically.
Yeah.
I wasn't hounding them and saying, go look at the 5G polls. They just did a story on it.
All new tonight, it will make your phone work lightning fast. But could 5G be making you sick? Warning signs popping up all over downtown Orlando. Tonight, the news station digging for answers. Is danger really beaming through the city? Those signs went up, so we went looking for answers.
The news station's Matt Trezza is working the story live for us. Matt, what did you find out?
Someone's been putting these signs up, these warning signs on the new 5G towers in downtown Orlando, telling people about their alleged dangers. Since the 5G poles have gone up in downtown Orlando, most folks never give them a second thought.
Have not noticed it. No, I have not seen them up there.
But there they are, standing above us all, silently beaming out the waves that enable the next generation of high-speed wireless data. That's worried at least one person enough to paste these signs on many of them, warning about the alleged dangers of the 5G signals, concerns the medical community says are nothing to worry about.
And these longer wavelengths are non-ionizing radiation. They don't cause cancer.
Dr. Manish Gasain is a radiation oncologist. He says the American Cancer Society has deemed the towers safe.
They're giving off intermittent radiation, and these just aren't to the levels that cause cancer and DNA breaks that we're concerned about.
There are some U.S. cities that have banned 5G towers because of cancer worries. But Dr. Gasain says based on his research, if you see a 5G tower, there's no need to walk on the other side of the street.
More studies will be done, but at this time there's no indication that this is going to cause any cancers.
And some people in downtown Orlando say they're looking forward to 5G's benefits.
Bring on the faster internet.
Now, we have no idea who put these signs up, and we contacted the websites that are listed on the signs with no response. The new 5G system is supposed to be more reliable and faster and allow more devices to connect at once. Live in downtown Orlando, Matt Trezza, Fox 35 News.
Obviously, I would say in that instance, your efforts to go out there and hit up so many signs, somebody had to be calling the station or something, somebody, or it could be a reporter happened to stumble across them, but more than likely, I would say, just based on experience, somebody was hitting up the station, hitting up somebody concerned, and they felt there was like, okay, we got to talk about this. You know? So again, there's another example of just getting out from behind the screen and taking a couple hours out of your afternoon to go put up some signs, and next thing you know, you get some local news coverage.
Exactly.
To me, these are the things that should inspire people to take action, which is one of the main reasons I want to talk to you, man, because there's, and this is not a judgment on anybody, but I think there's a lot of folks who, again, are just not really seeing the value and the importance in this stage we're in of being out there in the streets, and
right.
I guess just for me and having a similar kind of path as what you've described, no matter how much work I do online, writing books or documentaries or doing videos online, there's still, to me, I remember telling myself years ago, if I'm not in the streets, I've stopped being an activist. Like, that's just the feeling I had. Like, if, it doesn't mean I need to be out there all the time, but if that stops being a part of my, toolbox, then I think I'm missing something. And so it's important, and I do think people get inspired, but, how do you, if you put any energy into this at all, like other than just leading by example, how do you try to inspire people? Because I know that's something I try to lead by example, and it's good when people are inspired, but also we are facing a lot of apathy too. I mean, and I know you've seen it. There's even apathy among activists who know what's going on, and they're just like, yeah, well, it's screwed. 5G's coming, there's nothing you can do, or the vaccines, whatever the issue is, you might as well give up. How do you go against and kind of battle that with that apathy?
I think the best way to do it is it's tough to just say this, but you just have to remain optimistic and look at everything with the glass half full. And I just continue to highlight victories and tell people stories about, the woman that pulled over and said, thank you for telling us about this. Or, I had a girl tell me one time at a Earth Day or something I was tabling for GMO-free Florida, and she said, my whole family watched this genetic roulette movie about GMOs, and my mom cried, and we all changed our diet, and it literally changed my life. And I'll never forget that instance. And when you highlight stuff like that, and you talk about there's local communities that are outlawing 5G. So people will say, oh, it's federally mandated, there's nothing we can do, the FCC, they bought everything. And that may be true to an extent, but when you look at these smaller victories, it still gets the conversation started. It still can get us somewhere. So I just tell people to keep chipping away at it. I mean, that's the best you can do.
I think that for me personally, I take inspiration from people like yourself. And whenever people bring this conversation, like, how do you not lose hope? And it's, not only am I personally trying to do everything I can as an individual, and I know that's what you do as well. And, Justin's a new father, and he's still finding time to do those things. But it's because I've met people like you and others who I know. I'm like, okay, I'm holding it down in Houston. Justin's in Orlando. These people, it's like Johan's over in India. This guy's in Australia. And I just know that there's good people out there, like you said, that are piece by piece chipping away at trying to keep these ideas alive, and as well as push back, because I'd say in the last 10 years, man, since I was, waking up and paying attention, they've definitely gotten more aggressive with their tactics to try to take away people's liberties and to be, the vaccine mandate is a big, I think, example of that. So I think, definitely being inspired by other people, the glass half full is a good way to go. Now let's talk about it for a moment, though. If we're unable to stop these mandates, have you given any thought to that? Because this is something that, for me, that I've, specifically on the vaccines, but let's say 5G, like you mentioned, there are lawsuits taking place all around the country. The New York Times won't tell you that. The Washington Post won't tell you that Portland and other states are saying no, and they're willing to get sued and go to court for this, and that there are hundreds of counties and cities that are fighting it, but it's happening. But what if we're not able to stop 5G? What if Orlando, does get rid of exemptions, or Texas does? These are thoughts that I've given more time to, especially as we were just talking off camera, the idea of becoming a parent or something like this in the future. Like, how do you feel about that? Of course, remaining optimistic, but also with this sort
you
of
have to be realistic
too. About what could happen.
Yeah, I think that those are tough questions, and I think people ask me that often. And some people will just say, well, you just got to move and totally opt out of the system. Now, obviously, homeschooling is an option, but I like the idea of some of the work that you do of building these little decentralized sort of pockets and communities. Because if you could, let's say you moved to Hawaii and you found a group that was doing some homeschool and some stuff, you could probably get away from it for a little bit. Now, they may come after Hawaii as well. I don't know. Do we leave and go to South America and try to do something on a Caribbean island, or what do? Do you leave? I'm not too sure, but I think that we have to keep the fight up to raise the awareness, and I think if we work on building maybe those alternate systems, hopefully we can do that. Because don't get me wrong, I've already moved once, not solely because of a 5G tower, but it was definitely in consideration. Sure. We had one really close to our apartment, and I was like, well, we kind of want to move, and this is even more of a reason to.
Sure.
But I'm not even that far away from one now.
Yeah.
So do you just keep moving? Do you paint your house and anti-Wi-Fi, and then you've got to move? It's just, what do you do? I think that's a tough question to answer. And
that's the point we're at now, though, is that for people, those listening at home, to really consider that a lot of the issues that we're tackling now, like I said, they're more invasive than they have been. It's not like some sort of far-off discussion. This is like, no, we are going to say it's mandatory to put something in your body, or we're going to put something outside your window. In Houston, you have both the poorest communities and the richest communities fighting 5G, because there's one that's 50 feet outside of an elementary school. There's one 35 feet outside of somebody's window, and people are starting to get the picture that this is going to be everywhere, and there really won't be anywhere to go. And to your point about the decentralized communities, I really do think that is the solution long term. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but the way I've seen it is, the viewers know I've got a documentary coming out on 5G, but I also have a book coming on the same day, and it's kind of the solutions aspect of it. The documentary is going to look at, like, what is 5G, the FCC, the corruption, and all that. And the book is the more how-to, like, how do we opt out of this sort of thing. And what I've written in the book is that, if we're unable to successfully stop these through, local ordinances or lawsuits, or, I've also talked to people who are like, if it's built in my neighborhood, I'm tearing it down. That kind of thing.
I immediately thought of John Patterson, the guy who drove the tank in another country.
There's definitely people who are like, I'm going to tear it down. So if we're not able to stop it in those ways, or the vaccines, there will come a point in time where you are going to have to say, I'm willing to break the law. Like, if they tell you your child must be now managed, like for example, in New York, they gave them 48 hours to get their kids vaccinated or face $1,000 fines, and then obviously down the line that might turn into jail time. But I feel like what it's going to need is for those of us who are kind of choosing to lead the way to step up and to gather the other parents or individuals who want to opt out of these things, and we just have to form our own communities. I mean, whether that means within the shell of the United States or South America or whatever it may be, and that might be different for different people. I feel like, and especially with the 5G smart grid, it's not just the health concerns, it's the kind of larger picture of this smart grid that if you don't opt in, well, then you can't do anything. You're going to be locked out of the system. And so the system itself is forcing those of us who don't want these things to make a choice. And I don't know when that point's going to come. I do think as we enter the 2020s, we're going to be in a very interesting period, to say the least, as all this is happening. But any thoughts on that, man?
Yeah, I don't know. It makes you wonder, do you just keep going into the country and moving into, because obviously we're in cities. I'm in Orlando, you're in Houston. This is more like right at our doorstep. Yeah. But I can move to a coastal city in Florida and maybe be good for another year or so. Yeah. And then move into, I don't know, Idaho or Kansas or something. But then look at what you're doing, you're literally running around hiding from something. So it's a tough decision to make. I think that we just, like I said, keep chipping away at it, and I couldn't sleep at night not doing something. Sure. You know what I mean? So I kind of have to just keep the attitude of, I'd rather, what's the saying, die on your feet than on your knees or whatnot. I can't just roll over and let it happen. Yeah. Whether we win or lose, I don't want to look back and say that, I just said screw it and gave up,
Exactly, and you have a child now, so that's even more of a reason to stand up and fight. Exactly. And I think that's the important thing to realize, is that what we do now is for the future generations, right? And so those who are listening, who are like, getting out of the street sounds nice, but I don't have time for it, I'm exhausted, or that's something for a different kind of activist. That's not me. Right. Or even I've had folks who are interested, but it's just not in their comfort zone. And you got to get out of your comfort zone. I mean, you just have to push yourself. I'm by nature more of an introverted person than I tended to be through activism, because I've just felt the call to got to get out there, I can be that one. As you do the same thing. I'd much rather just be at home reading and working on my research than having to I got to go out and do it. But when I meet that person or have that conversation, it reminds you, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this activism. So get outside of your comfort zones, push yourself, because we're in a really difficult time, and also a beautiful time where a lot of people are questioning things, and a lot of people are waking up, and there are cities pushing back against 5G, pushing back against vaccines. The New Jersey, they just successfully had a victory there, and I'm sure there'll be more to come.
And there's another thing too, I would just want to remind people, is that you can always be your own type of activist. I was inspired by people like you, people like Adam Kokesh, Luke Radowski, and I was like, I want to get out there and, confront politicians and do my own news. We have to be the media. So I was inspired in a certain way to become sort of a journalist activist. But you don't have to go that route. Sure. If you absolutely hate standing on a corner and passing out flyers, then maybe you design the flyer. Yeah. Maybe you get involved with this worldwide 5G march this weekend and you design the memes for them to promote it. Video editing. There's so many different things that we can all do. You can do it from behind a computer screen. Sure. You can do it from a street corner. So, if everyone can get involved in their own way, and also the other thing you have to remember is your conversations are activism too. Yeah, absolutely. When you're talking to the store clerk or your family members, when you bring up certain things and start these conversations, that is changing the narrative. That's
Absolutely.
changing public perception. So be an activist every single day. That's the message I would give to people.
Exactly. I've said before that the evolution, it's in the conversations, it's in the day-to-day actions we do. It's not only just the time you're holding the sign, but it's the time you're in the Uber and you decide to start talking to somebody
Great
about
time to
that.
do
You
it.
know, actually today when I was flying out of Richmond, I'm going through the body scanner and I opt out as I always do. And the guy starts telling me how it's safe, there's nothing to worry about. I'm like, dude, I've got a documentary on this shit coming out next week. Trust me, I've done the research.
Yep.
But he was willing to listen, and by the end of it, he's asking for my YouTube channel and saying, like,
Exactly.
I started telling him about, like, hey, you know, there's been lawsuits from TSA before because they started getting cancer clusters. And he's like, look, if there's a lawsuit, I'll be the first one to, you know,
Right.
join and this and that. But he took my information. He's like, I'm going to look you up. I'm going to look at your work. So,
Right.
I mean, it can happen anywhere.
It can. I've had conversations with TSA agents with my T-shirt. You know, I opt out of the scanner, and then they're looking at my T-shirt asking me questions. So you just never know. I've even been searched multiple times, and they just start going through my information. You've got GMO pamphlets and fluoride pamphlets, and they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, take some of those home with you.
Yeah,
So
keep some of those.
You
That's
never
cool.
know who you might wake up one day. So
All right, brother. Well, hey, guys, I got to get going so I can get back and make sure I don't miss this flight. Anything else you want to leave everybody with, your channels and just
yeah,
whatever
feel
they
free to
can-
find me on Facebook, Justin Harvey, Instagram, JHarveyWRC, and We Are Change Orlando.
All right, guys, until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. Peace.